markets are quite clearly sulking, not sure how much of bad news they have to factor in, primarily because of the monsoon factor and that 12% deficiency that the Indian Meteorological Department announced yesterday. Now, we have with us people who have seen many such cycles of droughts and floods. Dr. Arvind Virmani, former Chief Economic Advisor, Finance Ministry, and now member of the RBI Advisory Committee, and S. Sridhar, CEO of Escorts Agri Machinery, to discuss how the macro and the micro impact of a poor monsoon should be understood. Dr. Virmani, morning, sir, and you go first. Exactly what can be the GDP impact of a poor monsoon?
So we have to keep in mind that the last year we've already had a bad agricultural year. I think it's close to zero or even negative. So beyond that, I would not be surprised if we take account of both the Kharif, which is the monsoon, and the Rabi, that we actually don't do much worse in growth terms than the previous year. So last year we had a reasonable average Kharif and a bad Rabi year. I would expect the opposite. So I'm not one of the pessimistic ones. Okay. However, of course, we know that the drought has to be managed, and we can discuss what are the different aspects of that.
Coming to that in a minute, I also wanted to ask you, to what extent is the global situation today more clement? I don't know the statistics just yet, very recently, but over the past several months, we've been told that food prices globally have crashed by anything between 10 and 30%, depending on which crop you're looking at. So is it that at least the drought is coming at a time when we can buy easily?
Right. So there are kind of three aspects of that. There are three types of crops. One, of course, are the tradable ones, and the ones we are deficient in, the oil seeds. So there the effect will only be on the current account deficit, because if you produce less, you will import more, and the impact as far as the people are concerned will not be all that much. Of course, those who are directly affected and produce less, their income goes down. So there's some income effects. But as far as prices is concerned, those commodities will definitely not be as badly affected. And that includes many other tradable goods. But there the question is of the import-export policy. So that is one of the policy aspects which has to be done very carefully. In the past, what has happened is that because both imports and exports and tariffs, everything is controlled in the agricultural sector, often decisions have been taken too little too late, I used to call them. But I'm hopeful that this time, as others have pointed out on your program earlier, that this government is really more decisive and quick. And so that kind of stuff will not happen, where you delay imports for a long time and you do it when the prices are falling. But I would hope, and here's a hope, that they would use this opportunity actually to reform some of that system and not just run it more efficiently. But so that is one set of things which are importable, and as you mentioned, international prices are pretty soft, so there won't be that much of a problem. Then, of course, the second part, which is very important, and again we've seen this government act, is where government itself has stocks, so cereals. So cereals are traditionally affected. We still have enough stocks. Hopefully those are not rotten, because that is one of the issues which comes down always when there's a second or third year of drought. So again, in principle, we should be able to manage those pretty well. And so really the third aspect remains, which is usually in terms of seasonal crops, vegetables, etc. People have talked about the distribution of the rainfall, the deficiencies, etc. That's where they'll come into play, where it's really localized markets and the seasonal fruits and vegetables which would be more strongly affected.
Dr. Virmani, good morning. I wanted to talk about the geographic distribution in slight detail. The IMD has forecasted that the northwest region will see a maximum deficiency of 15%. But we all know that states like Punjab and Haryana do have high amount of irrigation levels. But given that this could be the second year of deficient monsoons, will the efficacy of that irrigation systems be reduced, causing further damage to some of these areas in the northwest?
Well, this is where, traditionally we used to say when there's a heavy Rabi rainfall, it destroyed standing crops. Again, it was a matter of timing. If it had come like a month later than it did, actually it would have had a positive effect. So in that sense, the excess Rabi rains mean that there's a lot of moisture in the soil. Okay. So in some sense, that's partially should be compensated. It should be will be compensating for the potential drought. Now, obviously, that's not true everywhere, as your picture is showing. In some places, that didn't happen. But to the extent that the Northwest received more Rabi rains, that actually increases the soil moisture and makes it easier to plant for the next season.
Okay. So, what could the overall impact on inflation be in your mind? Because there's there are a lot of economists writing about the or rather changing their forecasts on CPI inflation. But since you are slightly more optimistic, do you think that the government will be able to manage the situation in a way that inflation does not get impacted, even if we're looking at a drought year?
Yeah, so a couple of points of effect, certainly between 1 and 2 points could be expected, because as I said, the seasonal vegetables and fruits, it can have a large impact. And even if they have a small weight, you can get up to a 1% or so of an uptick in inflation. But the rest of it depends on management. You'll recall that the governor made a big point about how the government manages it, and we've gone through the two aspects which is very important: the import-export policy and how that is managed, and the food stock part of it. Now, if that is efficiently managed, then we should not have those two types of effects. It's very difficult to manage vegetables. You can manage, for example, fodder and milk, which is affected. So a lot of it will depend on how well the structure is managed. Often what happens in the past is that you keep delaying decisions. For example, it's not very easy to think of fodder and how it affects the milk prices. So the whole milk economy has to be managed if there is a severe drought. Again, we'll have to see, depending on which parts are more affected, worse affected, less affected, etc. So a lot of it depends on management of the agricultural system at that point in time.
Okay. Well, I'll come back to you.